Good morning. We are going live in just a few moments with Laura from Mountain Kula Yoga, located in New Hampshire, our second studio partner in the beautiful state of New Hampshire. And I'm very excited to chat with Laura about her space. Apparently, they're in a very beautiful barn. If you look on her website, I can't wait to talk to her more about it. Living in New York City, we don't have the opportunity to practice yoga in such large spaces. So I love chatting with studio owners who are located outside of the city and seeing where they practice. Oh, I see Laura has joined us now. And let's add her in. All right. Good morning.
Good morning.
How are you today?
I'm wonderful. How are you?
I'm good. I'm always so relieved when Instagram works.
Me too, because I've never done a live before. So I'm a newbie.
Oh, how exciting! Yay,
Yeah.
I'm so excited. So I was
Yeah.
doing a short introduction about your studio, and when I was looking on your website, are you located in a barn? Is that correct? A
It
farmhouse.
it
Okay.
is. It is an old it's the stagecoach for an inn that's up the hill. It's like 100-year-old barn. And
Wow.
we are in the lower level. It's beautiful. There's a market, so there's a health food store upstairs, an eco-conscious boutique with lots of gifts there, and then a farm to table
Oh,
cafe with smoothies and soups and all so many delicious things. So yeah, it's really a whole experience. Plus there's a wellness studios upstairs where you can get a massage, Reiki. Those are all separate businesses from
yeah.
us, but we're part of one big like conglomerate.
So you could go and just spend the whole day. You could do your yoga, have your meal, do some shopping.
Absolutely, totally. And we're in this beautiful valley called the Mount Washington Valley of northern New Hampshire. We get a lot of traffic up from Boston, Massachusetts,
Oh,
even New York.
yeah.
And we're about a 6 hour drive. But you land here and it
Mhm.
is just gorgeous. We just had snow, the blue sky is out, so it's a blanketed in white. And we have wonderful ski hills and hiking trails, so it's perfect all times of the year. So you can get your outdoor adventures in as well as get your yoga in at the studio.
I love that. So how long have you been in that space?
So when the pandemic hit, so basically a year and a half,
Mhm.
as of 2021, September, we opened
Yeah.
as Mountain Kula
Yeah.
Yoga. There was previously a studio upstairs where there's more of a boutique now.
Right.
And so they had to maintain upstairs, they had to maintain that market during the pandemic. So yoga went by the wayside,
Mm.
except for a little bit of online. And as a student of the studio at the
Yeah.
time, I reached out to the owner and said, everyone was asking, when's
Right.
the studio going to open again? But I was like, really, when?
Yeah.
What's going to happen?
I'm waiting.
Yeah, yeah. So lo and behold,
Yeah.
one conversation turned into the next, and I'm buying the yoga studio business aspect that whole of
Yeah.
that business. So yeah, we took it downstairs from where it used to be, and I always noticed this space downstairs. There had been a few different iterations of what it was. It had been a gallery, beautiful stone walls and brick. And then there's these granite columns. We're the granite state,
Mm.
so there's a lot of granite up here. Um, and so I had this vision of how it could really come to life down there. But initially it was like, oh, it's a basement. We're doing yoga in the basement.
Right.
Like, it's just like an afterthought. I'm like,
Yeah.
oh no, there's so much more to
Right.
this. So so we knocked a wall
Yeah.
down to make the space bigger, which is probably what you saw
Hmm.
online from the photos. And then added a restroom so that people would have it would be one thing downstairs, and so and then we added a subfloor,
Wow.
so it was previously concrete. So it's beautiful. People walk down. There's still a little light comes
Yeah.
in. What used to be a silo
Mhm.
is still this round spiral staircase in the
Mhm.
back. And so light comes in from that as well.
Oh,
So
beautiful.
it's beautiful. We can hold about 30 to 35 people for a yoga class with mats down. And then
Yeah.
for other events, we can hold up to 50 people.
Wow. So it's a big space. How did that transition from being a student then to suddenly being a studio owner? What was that like?
It has been the most crazy learning experience of my life, really. That and like actually giving birth to, and having children. This has been a whole nother thing. And
Yeah.
I couldn't have imagined it happening this way.
Mm.
For years, I had wanted to actually get out of my career that I had been doing for 20 years, which was actually in the fashion industry. So
Oh,
I'm very
yeah.
familiar with New York.
Yeah.
I never actually worked in New York, but was there all the
Yeah.
time for business. Um, and there was just, I wanted to get into the wellness business
Mm.
somehow. I wanted to not just teach yoga, but really kind of form a community
Mm.
that, for seekers of spiritual and yogic traditions,
Yes.
and that were just on that path, And so I had this vision of forming maybe something on the side while I was still
Mm.
doing my design work
Yeah.
of a community, of building like a nonprofit or
Right.
some type of community. And I just kept thinking community.
Mm.
And so when it happened that I was looking like I was going to buy the studio,
Yeah.
I had just finished my teacher training. So I hadn't even actually taught yet. So I
Right.
was like, wow, this is so
Yeah.
intimidating. How much imposter syndrome can one person handle at a time?
Yeah.
So I learned a lot. I learned
Yeah.
so much, and just kept following my heart, because ultimately then I realized, oh, this is the community that I
Mm.
wanted to build.
Yeah.
And I was familiar with the term Kula,
Mm.
Kula,
Mm.
from my teacher training when we came into our small groups, and referred to them as a
Yeah.
Kula, a
Yeah.
community that comes together to practice yoga both on and off the mat. And we're in this mountain town. USA Today has
Yeah.
called our ski town, mountain town, one of the top in the
Wow.
country for
Yeah.
multiple years. So Mountain Kula
Mm.
Yoga is
Mm.
how that was born.
Yeah.
And it's just been such a blessing and honor, really,
Mm.
to lead this community, because it's like nothing else. It's just the people that come. Um, are like family. It's really, really
I
wonderful.
love
And
that.
yeah, thanks.
In those moments when I'm just so fascinated by this because it's such a big transition. Like it's a lot of things all at once. You're going from being a student to now all of a sudden being a teacher and a small business owner on top of it. In those moments where they were particularly challenging, what was your go-to in terms of like your first step? Okay, was it a person? Was it a personal mantra that you have? How did you sort of reset in those moments when it got a little more challenging than normal?
Yeah, yeah. Well, that's a great question, and it's ongoing.
Mm.
But I always come back to be of service,
Mm.
um, because and really be me,
Yeah.
and you know, um, I've had to step into um, really owning my authenticity, and that and just yeah, just believing in myself has just been a daily practice,
Yeah.
um that people are there to listen and receive and learn, and they're not judging me.
Mm.
And
Yeah.
really the practice of letting go of a lot of perfectionisms and
Mm.
needing it to be just right, but really leaning on the practices,
Right.
and practicing what I preach, and whether and being accepting of that changing what my practice might look like.
Yeah.
every day, but that there's some consistency,
Mm.
just because I think that's what yoga is. It gifts us this this ability to drop in this tool, these so many different
Yeah.
tools. And so, there's no one size fits all, but for me, it has been really finding my voice. And so to do that, I actually was always wanting to sing. And then I found
Yeah.
mantra and
Yeah.
devotional music. So that's been a big part for me.
Yeah.
Um, and I started out, my background is in Ashtanga yoga,
Mm.
but I wasn't feeling like that was where I wanted to teach, or that
Mm.
was where I was really trained to teach. So I'm teaching vinyasa. So really just learning to listen on the mat of like,
Right.
oh, this is what wants to come forward.
Mm.
Um, and yeah, I also teach a yoga for mental health class.
Oh, wow.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and so really what the question you're asking me of like,
Yeah.
how do you do it? It's like, well, I do it, and then I'm also sharing
Mm.
just my trial and errors
Mm.
too, that there's so many tools here that if we can just plant some seeds here and there of like, maybe it's breath work, maybe it's mantra,
Yeah.
maybe it's a physically demanding class,
Yeah.
maybe it's a really
Yeah.
restorative class, but being able to offer like lots of different things, especially because it's a broad community yoga
Mm.
studio. We aren't set in one lineage.
Mm.
Um, so to just be able to help others kind of learn what is speaking to them.
Yeah. And I think that's so important. Many people that I've spoken to, their first yoga class, they might not have liked it, quite honestly,
Mhm.
and it might have been something you have to go back to, or when I did a previous IG live, try different styles. Do you remember how you said it was Ashtanga that you started with? How did that happen? Was it a friend that introduced you to yoga? How did you first even become aware of the practice?
Yeah, great question. I actually had this opportunity when I was working in the clothing
Oh,
industry. I
wow.
worked for a
Yeah.
company that had Robert Moses is
Mm.
quite a well-known yogi,
Yeah.
and he has Namarupa. Robert
Yeah.
Moses. He worked with Eddie Stern,
Yeah.
and um, and so he was working at Eastern Mountain Sports where I worked, and he was giving free yoga at lunch. And so to be able to have Ashtanga yoga from one of the first practitioners who
Right.
came to the Western world with Ashtanga,
Yeah.
for free at lunchtime was my lunch breaks. And so that was my introduction. And then I had a bit of a home practice, but then never really went to the studio. So
Yeah.
that's a whole nother thing, is this was one
Right.
of the only studios that I had ever gone to before I
Right.
started, before I owned it. Um, Anything's possible.
Yeah.
Oh, so yeah, but then the studio that was previously upstairs at the
Yeah.
location where Mountain Kula Yoga is, there was an Ashtanga practitioner teaching Ashtanga yoga there.
Mm.
So I started going. I was timid about going
Mm.
after having been away for a few
Yeah.
years. It's a pretty vigorously, physical
Yeah.
practice, but yeah, I learned so much from that practitioner and just got back into it. And then I wanted to know more, and then that's
Mm.
where, it's a set sequence.
Yeah.
So you go along and um, do that same primary series
Yeah.
over and over again, which is a beautiful way to really learn the postures and to get into yoga. So I'm so grateful for it. Um, and then I wanted to learn more about what was really happening in the subtle and energetic bodies.
Wow.
And
Yeah.
yeah, so that's when I reached out to Ashley Turner, who has
Mm.
Yoga Psyche Soul and
Yeah.
teaches a 300-hour YPS. So yeah, so I took her teacher training, and that really opened up the doors to so many different aspects of yoga, trauma informed, social
Wow.
justice, those
Yeah.
pieces that I really hadn't seen up here where we're in a more rural place.
Mm.
So to be able to come in and offer more all levels yoga that really, like I just had somebody come in this
Mm.
morning and say, um, I'm not sure like if I can do this. And I'm like, you are fine. You are
Right.
here and
Yeah.
she's like, so it's okay if I do something different. And I'm like, 100%. That is
Yeah.
absolutely,
Yeah.
you listen to your body. And I hadn't heard that before in the Ashtanga world.
Oh, wow.
You know, Ashtanga is very much like you go along, this is what we're doing.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
not free form.
Right.
And there's different practitioners that may offer it different ways, but in my experience, it was limiting to me not having that bodily
Mm,
autonomy to really know, okay, I actually need a little bit of this today or a little bit
mm.
of that. I actually need to, work on my core. I need to take a restore. I need to lie back
Yeah.
on the bolster and have some restorative time now. So yeah, so just yeah, that's
What
how
do
I got.
you find? You mentioned that you offer a lot of different classes and styles. What do you find that your community is most responsive to? And I know it might change depending on the season, especially in New Hampshire where you can get that extreme cold. But do you find that there's a general style or offering that you guys have that people really, really respond to?
Yeah, totally. This past fall and winter, we offered a winter sport prep yoga
Mm,
with one of our teachers that used to be a ski racer, and she brought in a lot of Pilates
mm,
aspect and just really spoke to that winter sport
mm.
person that is so predominant up here.
Yeah.
And people loved
Yeah.
that. And then it's funny because I think there's two spectrums of it. I think
Mm,
people are very physically focused on those like outdoor pursuits up here in the mountains,
yeah.
but they're also what we see a huge response from is our restorative and our sound healing. And we try to
Mm,
do that about once a month for we just did a sound healing this past week. And that's received really well. So it's like there's these two big
right.
ends of the
Yeah.
spectrum. And then as well as these so many, we have several all levels
Yeah.
flow and vinyasa classes. But yeah, I see a little bit of both. um, and anytime we really speak to that outdoor
Yeah.
athlete, so we're going to start a yoga for hikers. And
Oh,
then
yeah.
in the summertime we do outdoor yoga. We take it
Mm,
right outside. We
yeah.
go near a pond. We do a hike after the class outside. We're also talking with our local farmers market to offer
Mm,
some yoga at the farmers market in the park. So there's a lot of opportunities to have your yoga actually outside up
yeah.
here too.
And I love hearing that. I'm based in New York City. I was actually born and raised here. So I love seeing studios all across the country and then hearing about offerings because we can do yoga here in the park, but it's not quite the same as it is in New Hampshire. You probably don't have rats scurrying around in your parks, but it sounds like such a beautiful thing to be out in nature and enjoying these practices. And it makes sense what you were saying with this sort of extreme ends. I feel like that's kind of where we are as people in general these days. We're sort of like we're very extreme and then we need to relax. I think it's sort of a general, I don't know, when I talk to my friends, everyone's kind of going through a little bit of that still, just a lot of energy and then, I just need to regroup and rest.
Oh yeah, that's such a good point. Like that is exactly, we just like went from 0 to 60 with the, okay, now we're coming back out into
Yeah.
society and doing things again. And it's like it's a decision fatigue of like, do I do this or
Yeah.
that?
Yeah.
Where I think we kind of got used to that, as that's how life is before, but now we had this big downtime. And so I see a lot of people that are excited to come into the studio and be a part of this community that were so isolated. So it's such a beautiful way to come together, such a beautiful way. Um, and um, and then at the same time, having too much going on.
Yeah.
So really being able to just hone in on like, okay, I know this is what I need
Yeah.
from my, for yoga, I need to come in, I need to be there 2 or 3 times a week.
Yeah.
And then, or mix it, have a little bit of gentle yoga a couple times and then a little bit more vigorous practice a couple times. So
I love it. Laura, thank you so much for chatting with us today. I wanted to just ask one, I want to say quick question, but it's not a quick question at all. It's actually a very loaded question, it can be. So the theme of our next issue is love. And thank you for partnering with us. It's only because of partners like you that we can create a print magazine that we can actually hold in our hands. Thank you for joining us. The theme of our next issue is love. What have you learned about love? What, if you could just say a couple of words, what have you learned, maybe especially in the last couple of years with everything that's been going on, that you have just really, really honed in on about love?
oh, that's such a beautiful question. And it's really how I came to the practice. Um, I have learned that we are love, and that to help for us to be our best selves is to be loving. Um and so I think all of these practices remind us that we're never alone, um and that we have each other, and love is really just it's who we are, and yoga helps us remember who we actually are as love, and that we don't have to seek it outside of ourselves, but it's always there. And yoga helps us tap into that love that's constant. Yeah.
Laura, thank you so much for joining us and for joining our love issue. If you're in the New Hampshire area, check out her beautiful studio and outdoor events that are happening this summer. I'm going to share this on our Instagram page, and I'll send you the YouTube link as well so that you can have this conversation. Thank you so much for joining us today. And your first IG Live, you did it.
Awesome. Thank you so much for having me.
Have a great day.
You too.